Hey, Advanced Lit, this lesson is over how to do a copy change. We're going to read the short story Girl in class, and then we're going to practice your own copy change, and I'll explain what that is in just a second. Okay, so let's take a look at the definition for copy change. So copy change is using another author's writing style or pattern as a framework for your own writing, or imitating or mimicking an author's syntax. And remember, syntax is the order of words that we find in a sentence. So let's take a really simple example. For instance, let's look at the original text of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, How I Wonder What You Are. Okay, first let's look at the syntax. What do we notice about these two lines? Well, you might say that here we have two words that are repeated. And what part of speech is twinkle? Twinkle is a verb. And it looks like we're talking to an object, a star, and we have an adjective to describe it, a little one. Then in the next line, we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 words. How I wonder what you are. So the author is thinking about something, and they start the sentence with how. What do you notice between the two lines? Well, star and are rhyme. Okay, so with those things in mind, let's see if we can mimic this style. So let's think about how we can do a copy change. All right, so if twinkle is a verb, let's think of something that kind of reminds us of twinkle. How about sparkle? So we could say something like sparkle, sparkle, little, okay, and sometimes you're going to use the exact same word. What's something that sparkles and little? How about gem? Gem. Sparkle, sparkle, little gem. All right, let's keep the how. How, I want 6 words. How much money will, and it has to rhyme, will I spend? So we have an approximate rhyme between gem and spend. All right, so that's what copy change is. You look at the original and kind of think about what's the author doing and ask yourself, how can I mimic that? All right, so that was an easy example. Let's take a look at one that's a little bit more complex. And this is basically what I'm going to ask you to do. So we're going to look at a couple lines from a short story called Eveline by James Joyce. And just to give you some context, Eveline is about a young woman, she's 19 or 20, who has, her mother has died, and she's found herself in the role of the mother. She has to take care of an ailing father. She has a brother who tries to help out and gives money, but she's the one who takes care of the father, and I think there may be younger siblings also. The dad's not very nice. So she feels like she has to protect them. She meets a man who wants to take her away. They live in Ireland, and he wants to take her to America. So think about the time period as like around what the Titanic would have been, early 1900s. So she has agreed to go with the man to America, and she's ready to get on the boat. So they're walking up to this big ship liner, and she's starting to have second thoughts. Okay, so James Joyce writes, no, 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 it was impossible. Her hands clutched the iron in frenzy. Amid the seas, she sent a cry of anguish. Eveline! Evie! He rushed beyond the barrier and called to her to follow. He was shouted at to go on, but he still called to her. She set her white face to him, passive like a helpless animal. Her eyes gave him no sign of love or farewell or recognition. Okay, so there's our original. So let's take a minute to figure out what we notice in this text. Well, the first thing that I notice is it starts with these 3 no's followed by exclamation points. So we have exclamations, 3 of them in a row, the same exact word, no, no, no. And then we have a very simple sentence, it was impossible. Now we have her hands are doing an action. So she's like at the railing, and she's clutching the iron of the railing in frenzy. So it gives this connotation that, she's like, in a tizzy. She doesn't know what to do. Then we have this description. Amid the seas, she sent a cry of anguish. So she like screams out, ah! And then he calls to her, Eveline, Evie. So uses her name and then calls her by a nickname. Then we have the boyfriend doing an action. He rushed beyond the barrier and called to her to follow. He was shouted at to go on. So she tells him, go on, but James Joyce does not put that in quotation marks, but still he called to her. So now we have her doing an action. She set her white face to him, passive. So we have a description here set off by commas. How did her face look? And then we have a simile, like a helpless animal. Her eyes gave him, so we have description of her face, gave him no sign of love or farewell or recognition. So we have 3 descriptions about her eyes. There was no sign of love, separated by or, farewell, or recognition. So now let's say that we wanted to copy change this. So we're going to have to think of situation. So I went with somebody shopping for like a prom dress. Okay. And so they're at the store and something happens. So I tried to mimic the top where we have 3 exclamations in a row. So I said, OMG, OMG, OMG. Okay, so repeated 3 times. It was impossible. This was terrible. Her fingers grasped the satin in despair, just like her hands clutched the iron in frenzy. Among the racks, she sent a text of misery. Okay, so we're putting it into the modern 21st century. So she's texting instead of sending a cry of anguish. And then someone calls to her name and then her nickname, Kayla, K. Okay, so we have someone doing an action. Here we have a dress swished beyond her budget, but tempted her to splurge. So see how we have a compound verb here. The dress was yanked off to be tried on, and it would go home with another. So she lost the dress to somebody else. So here we have Eveline setting her white face to him, passive, like a helpless animal. So Kayla bowed her head to the victor, unresisting. So we have it set up with a comma, like a weeping willow. And then we have a simile here. Then here we have her face belied no loss of date or corsage or dance. So we have 3 things that she would be missing out on because she can't go to prom because she didn't get her dress. Okay, so what your job is to do is to first identify the text features that you notice in the original text, and then it's your job to try to mimic those text features. So like here we have our 3 exclamations in a row. So down here, I wrote 3 exclamations in a row and tried to mimic the syntax, included literary devices like similes where they were originally in the new one. So what we're going to do is to read the short story Girl. It's very short. We're going to read that in class together. We're going to look at the text features of Girl, and then you're going to be responsible for making a copy change. And we'll set the parameters and criteria for that in class. Okay? So if you get to doing your homework over copy change for Girl and you can't remember, obviously come back to this video and watch it. All right, if you have any questions, as always, shoot me an email and I would be happy to help. All right, bye for now, my friends.